Why do we need AI to make music or to do anything at this point? Like why can't we do it ourselves? What would be your answer to that?
Oh wow, we're getting deep, philosophical at the end. Okay, well, I'll get equally deep then to match. There is an intrinsic part to the human spirit to create something beyond itself.
Not your average Joseph.
So everybody, I'm not your average Joseph for Use It Music. I'm here with my man Blue,
Yo, yo.
aka Blue, goes by the name of Sean Watson. Just give people a quick rundown on who you are.
um, so I am the SVP of Special Projects and Revenue Operations at a company called Trend Hunter. I work with Fortune 1000 brands to help them create their future. I specialize in technology and a particular focus on AI currently. In a nutshell, I get to travel around the world, go to these large companies, you name them. I've been there, Google, Coca-Cola, and even smaller brands as well. And I've helped them come up with their next best idea, whether that be a product or a service.
Okay, dope. So basically, what we're going to discuss today, I guess I should give people a quick rundown of myself for those who don't know, who haven't been following the channel. Not your average Joseph. My name is Andrew Josephs. I've been in the music software retail industry for about, I want to say, maybe 10 plus years as a music software distributor for a company called Music Marketing. Handled brands such as Cubase, Reason, FL Studio, just to name a few. With more than 10 years experience, I kind of seen the gauntlet of just going from analog to digital. And now here we are in the AI space. So the reason why I want to have this conversation is because with the recent happenings with Timbaland, there's been a lot of questions that's been going around about this whole AI and what it means for the future for not only producers but artists in general. So I've been seeing a lot of things on the internet, but no real perspective on the AI side as far as how the operation is handled and what we can expect in the future. So this is why we got Mr. Watson here to kind of help fill us in on that side of things. And I guess the first question I would like to ask is, how is AI trained? Because with the whole Suno incident, we're hearing that a lot of music has been, whether taken legally or illegally, and used to train the AI for Suno. So
Right.
what's involved in training?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, um, and sometimes it even helps to take a bit of a step back, even to define AI from a start point, because I think these days it's used in a variety of different ways. And for us to dive deep in what's happening on that side with Sono and with what I think is going to happen in the creative world, I think it's important to talk about what AI really is. And I try to keep it in the simplest terms as possible. It's like the ability of computers or machines to think like human or display human intelligence, right? So things like learning from experience, recognizing patterns, solving problems, making decisions, those type of things are what make a machine seem like a human. Now, when we talk about the current AI craze, it's really a craze in what we call generative AI, which is a few levels down from artificial intelligence as the overall branching title, right? You have
Okay.
AI, you've got machine learning under that, and you got deep learning, and you've got generative AI, which is simply generative AI. You enter a text prompt input into the machine, and it generates an output. That output could be text, video, music, or audio. So when it comes to training these, what they call large language models, LLMs, There's a
Okay.
few different phases, but the most important phase is this kind of pre-training phase. Um, you might wonder what you've heard Chat GPT. The GPT stands for generative. Now you know what generative means.
Right.
Pre-trained, pre-training, transformer.
Okay.
And transformer is kind of a way of learning. So there's two main styles. There's your BERT style and your GPT style, which is what we're all familiar with. BERT
Right.
um, essentially, for simplicity, creates a sentence and then masks a word in the sentence, and the computer tries to figure out what that word is. And GPT style, it predicts what the next word is, generates it alongside. It's like super advanced.
Okay.
So that same process could be used in an algorithmic music sense, predicting what the next note in a song or a genre type beat could be, depending on a
Right.
variety of factors and what it's been trained on before. What it's learned is a trap beat, or what it's learned is a Timberland like beat, to think of what note, what beat, what hit would come next. And it does it
Got
really,
it.
really well.
Okay. Okay. Now, and is it the same that would be said for it doing, let's say, like graphics, for instance? Is it the same type of model used to train the graphics, or is that something different? What it's doing there?
Exactly. It can ingest billions of pictures, right? And it could look at this scene that I have in front of me right now, look at the plant that's in my background and say, according to all these billions of pictures I looked at before, what would it look like if that plant wasn't there? And it can wipe it out by estimating what it could be. So yeah, it can work in pictures, it can work in a variety of different ways.
Now, for it to understand that it's a plant in the background that it has to take out, it first has to know what a plant is. A when you're getting involved in training,
Mhm.
do you have to define things for the language to be able to understand what it is? Is like, do you say, okay, this
Yeah.
is a picture of a plant, and like maybe show it like thousands of plants until it has the understanding of what a plant is
Mhm.
before it can say, in this picture, that's a plant
Yeah,
type of deal?
exactly.
Oh,
That's exactly right. So within, or maybe after the pre-training phase is more accurate, there's a fine-tuning phase where you're looking at um, uh, kind of supervised learning of the model using kind of like labeled data sets. So like this is a plant, for example. This is what is
right.
a plant is made up of. Anytime you see this algorithmic digital version or representation or number set, that's a plant. And here's a
Okay.
variety of them, billions of versions of those. So it recognizes that.
Now, in regards to music,
Mhm.
would you say that it's easier to train? Because again, with the artist or the designer or whatever, like it's very visual, so it can probably see and then take those images and kind of generate what it needs from there. Whereas audio is, it's really just relates to frequency, which happens to be numbers, and maybe not necessarily needs to hear the sound, but you can say, okay, I've already described that this is the frequency of D, so anytime you play this frequency you'll get a D.
Exactly.
Okay.
So in that respect, understanding music, which is frequency analysis, is so much easier for a computer than it is language, right? There's only so many notes, so
Right.
many combinations. You can get into the timbres, which change things up from a frequency perspective, and hearing, but it could tell from the data, the numbers, what that frequency, what that sound should be. And extrapolate that out, what the compounding melodies should be for a typical genre, it could very easily figure out, especially when it's trained on existing music.
Okay, so you wouldn't necessarily need you wouldn't necessarily need examples of music per se in order for it to create music. The only time you would need the example is if you want to create a specific type of style of music
Mm.
and say, okay, apart from you understanding what notes these frequencies fall in, and then you can reproduce these frequencies, if I want a particular style, you would have to reproduce the sequences like this and then feed it an example of that style of music.
Yeah, I mean, typically when we're thinking about labeling a data set is more for our own kind of categorization, right? So if you think of, hey, this is a trap beat, and I give it to a model, and this is what a trap beat sounds like. This is what some of the elements of the trap beat. This is what an 808 sounds like. Here's how it's placed out across, across the repeating pattern. Here's all the instruments that are usually in it. It doesn't care that it's a trap beat. It knows it's that data set, and it knows millions of variations that are very close to that data set. So for it to come up with a new version of that without it being labeled trap, for example, it's not very hard. Change a couple things, you understand the patterns and requirements that it should live in. It's easy for
Right.
the AI to come up with a new version of that, a tweaked version of that.
Got it. Got it. All right. I think that's very important to understand when we get into deeper to the conversation of the whole Suno and AI. But before we even reach there, what would you say would have been your first experience with as far as music or music software kind of heading into that AI direction?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And if I wanted to be honest, to go back, and if I wanted to use my technical definitions of things, anything that was pattern recognition is technically
Okay.
AI. If you're figuring out a tempo by playing something, it's guessing the tempo. That's an AI understanding what the pattern is and what the BPM is there. I think more recognizable most and I talked about my background. Funny enough, I do all this, and I actually went to school for audio engineering. I was an engineer for years in the studio. I still play with Fruity Loops to this day. Um,
Okay.
it it it's interesting to think about it from that perspective. So for me, Melodyne, Autotune, that kind of automatic pitch correction, and that analysis of
Yes.
frequency would probably be the closest thing to like full out AI, I would say. Was my first, I was like, whoa, this is different. This is completely computer modeled and algorithmic, but it works so well to trick the ear. So that would probably be the first encounter I really call AI in creative production.
Yeah, and as we embark upon I think it's the 25th anniversary this year for Melodyne, that was one of the pieces of softwares that came to my mind as well. There's an interview with Peter Neubacher, who's the inventor, and he basically is explaining how he kind of programmed the algorithm, and I think that's another thing what people are not understanding is that creating the algorithms is probably, would you say, like the first step of what AI was supposed to be? Because back then we weren't looking at it as AI, but technically it was AI.
Yeah, and that goes to those levels I talked about in the beginning, where maybe that was at the machine learning level, where you're basically giving it an input and expected outputs for it to figure out and attach to, as opposed to deep learning, where it's kind of taking the inputs and figuring out its own path, or training itself in a way, so to speak. So yeah, even back then when we were doing those types of functions, they were like machine learning or AI, in my opinion, and even further back to some synthesizer stuff, right? Some of
Okay.
that with machine learning and understanding and frequency manipulation and automatic frequency manipulation, especially through algorithmic processing, was early AI.
Got it. Got it. So with that being said, because again, I'm talking almost 25 years ago,
Mhm,
and I I've been starting to see glimpses of different pieces of software just from being in the industry. Different pieces of software actually kind of entering into the foray of that. Like there's been, like, apart from the pitch corrections,
mhm,
I've been seeing like vocal software within the last, I want to say, maybe 5 or 6 years coming into the market, albeit it may have not been to the level that it is now,
mhm.
but still, you can see like the rudimentals starting. And at that point, I think everybody was still looking at it as something that's going to help the producer get to where they need to go. And being that it's still kind of rudimental, no one really thought of it ever really, getting to a point where it would take the place of an actual singer or something like that. So, mainly just for references purposes. Like you're sending it to a singer, hey, this is kind of a vocal reference of what I want you to do, but yet you still needed the singer to get that real sound, that real crisp sound.
Right.
Um, when would you say, in your opinion, all of that started to change?
So I really think it started to change with this generative AI craze that started maybe about 3, 4 years ago now. We went from vocal manipulation. So, like you said, having that singer come in and provide a vocal track, which then I could manipulate, which we've been doing forever, pitch up, pitch down.
Right,
And it turned into generation, where now I don't even need a singer. I can model a singer's voice, type out what I want them to say, and they will sing that song in that voice being generated without having to be recorded. And that's really where the flip came, this generative AI piece, where we could now generate content, audio, video, text, just from a simple input, a prompt, a text input. So that's where I
right.
see the change came. And in some respects, I understand the fear of it, right? Why
Yeah,
people, especially with creatives, are like, hey, this is kind of insulting to the art form. Um, and it makes sense. I think there's a couple of pieces around that we'll probably dive deeper into. So I don't want to go too far ahead. But
okay,
to me, I don't quite see yet the difference, even though this is an incredibly fast moving technology, the fastest moving technology we've ever seen,
right,
how different it is from any technology that's come before. Years ago, decades ago, musicians said this about sampling and samplers, right?
right, right,
This is kind of taking, you're not a musician, you can't play the notes, you're remixing things of other people that exist, you have no talent, you didn't do the music theory, and it's going to destroy the art of music. And
right.
sitting from the side I would say that absolutely wasn't true. The sampler became a tool to make new forms of music.
Yeah,
And I think very true of AI. Now, we all know terrible samplers, right? People who go and take an entire loop, drop it, put a couple uh, kicks and hats under it, and they go, "Yeah,
yeah.
I chopped up a sample," and we're like, "Absolutely not." Um,
Right, right.
and that's AI to me, right? Right, especially as it is right now.
Okay.
Yeah, it can pull, you can sample something, sure, and chop it, but can you really chop up and make something brand new? Is that creative juice behind it yet? I don't think so. Now, again, the worry is AI is moving so fast and getting so good that it could very well be there just now. But I think we're underestimating human creativity, right? I think there's going to be something else, another flavor we add to AI empowered music that makes it human. Otherwise, we're just not going to like it.
Yeah. I mean, it also, I mean, going back to the time where a lot of a, a, a lot of the equipment became accessible once we started hitting the digital realm. Um, it became the start of the bedroom producer, right?
Right.
And just like you're saying, sampling being one of the tools, you had a lot of digital software that emulated actual instruments. So you didn't have to go out and buy like maybe a $10,000 Steinway piano. You may have like a $199 version on your computer,
Right.
and it allowed studios to become more compact, and it allowed more people to actually enter into the game. And it always comes to mind when I see, you're also a veteran of the Battle of the Beat Makers. A lot of those guys probably would not have the opportunity that they had once it became digital.
Right.
But the flip side to that was you still kind of had to know what you were doing,
Right.
right?
Right.
You couldn't just say, "Hey, it's not accessible to me."
Right.
Anybody could do it, right? It's
Right.
like you still had to have. I mean, in order for it to sound really good, you still
That's
had to kind of have an idea of
right.
what you were doing.
Mhm.
An example of that is I want to say with the whole the the digital controllers, the Serata era, where
Mhm.
it just, we went from playing wax and everything now being just digital files. You no longer had to mix analog records. You're
Mhm.
mixing digital files, and then it became to a point where beat matching became a thing available to you. Tempo matching became a thing available to me, and then they started actually mixing this stuff for you. A funny example is I was at a bar maybe last year, so won't name the bar because then I might put the DJ out there. But me and Marv, Marv is my co-host at the Particle Sons podcast. Me and Marv went out to this, this bar slash restaurant to just kind of catch the vibe of it. Now, the DJ that was there when we got there, he was playing I want to say maybe techno music, and techno I guess is around maybe 120 to 140 bpms per minute. And I got there and I was like, okay, um 15 minutes in, still at that tempo. 20 minutes in, still at that tempo. 30 minutes in, I'm looking at Marv, I'm like, is this guy ever going to change the tempo? Right? And I'm looking around the bar and nobody's on the dance floor. Nobody's doing anything in regards to say that they're acknowledging that there's an actual DJ here playing, and they're catching a vibe from it.
Mhm.
It got to the point where he was playing other genres at the same
At
tempo.
120.
At the same one.
Right.
So whether it was country, it was country techno. If it was R&B, it was R&B techno. And and then I started saying to myself, this guy's not a real DJ.
No. No.
Because first of all, he's not reading the room
Right. Right.
as a real DJ should.
Mhm.
He's not, getting the people involved in the music as a real DJ should.
Right.
This person just looked like he got his hands on a controller and he got some music service that would give him music, and this is all he knows right now at this point.
Yeah.
And it made for a really horrible DJ. So again, you can have these tools,
Mhm.
but it's always going to depend on how you use the tools, right?
Absolutely.
And
But that's one of the things I love about technology, because it democratizes creativity in a way. Like I may not have time to learn an instrument or get a saxophone, but I can learn to play a little bit with this piece of technology. Am I going to be any good? Not unless I have the talent, I have to put in the work. Unless I
right,
have an innate creativity, and that's the same with everything. I think it's going to be the same with AI. It may be a little harder to tell
yeah,
whether something's real or not, or something's AI. But even to this moment, we've had digital music for how long? And you can still tell the difference when somebody brings in a live band, even to a recording, which you're listening to on an MP3. And you can tell
yes,
the difference in that mix when you hear it. And that's an aesthetic you can still go for. My uncle was a photographer. He spent a
okay,
bunch of hours, and I tell a story all the time, he spent a bunch of hours in the dark room. Digital
mm,
photography came out, dark rooms went away. You can still go
right,
get
right,
that dark room aesthetic if you want to develop your film and take love. People love that aesthetic, and it takes a certain skill to do that. And even digital, everybody's got a phone to take pictures of the same
right.
quality as other people, but you know who's a great photographer even from their phone. So the talent's always going to shine through. And I think the same things with AI. Yes, you're going to hear people copying other people's beats very easily, making a Timbaland like beat, but there's going to be no soul in it. And after we hear a bunch of AI music and it all sounds kind of regurgitated, we're going to be able to tell, no, that's not good.
Okay, so I mean, well, since you mentioned Timberland, this whole idea with the, I mean, it's twofold. I think the argument is with Timberland. I think the first argument that I caught wind of was him creating an AI label and then him going forward
Right.
with an AI artist.
Mhm.
What's your feeling about that?
it's it's interesting and it's scary, but not because I think an AI artist can destroy the creativity of music.
Right.
It's because of like social media and the platforms that exist that people take at face value could be
Yeah.
dangerous. And I think it
Okay.
has more to do with us as a people and how we consume art, how we devalue art, and how we're consumed by and directed by social media, that it makes the idea of having a easily manipulated, cheap to make artist who pumps popcorn, hollow, soulless music into outlets like social media that we hear all day over and over again, algorithmically
Right.
programmed to
Right.
desensitize us to what good music sounds like, and therefore great artists don't get heard and the art dies, so to speak. And
Mm.
to me, that's a very passive way to look at it because we've encountered this before. We've seen technology rise before. Again, not technology like this, but we've seen how the art has grown, and we've seen that how the art doesn't have limits. It can become something new and fresh and real still, even with technology doing a major part of it. I think as a tool, it's opening up some fantastic spaces for art to go. So I'm not as worried. Maybe I'm optimistic. Maybe I spend too much time talking to AI and it's already got me convinced that it's going to be
Right.
okay. No, I'm working to bring in the overlords. But I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
think that that scary future of a place where we're all drones listening to the same song
Yeah.
100 different ways is one that's going to come true. But maybe that's just me.
Well, I mean, one of the arguments that was raised was like, I mean, you have so many talented singers out there. Why would you need to create an AI artist to go ahead and put music out with? Because essentially, what you're doing is a human who could have had that chance. You're now saying, "I'm going to give AI that chance."
Right. Right. Yeah. It is difficult to think of that from that perspective. But again, when I look back at technology that's gone past, that's always been the case. There's always
Right.
been people who've lost. You know, at one time, books were handwritten by monks in churches. Then the printing press came out, and all those
Yeah.
monks were out of business. My
Yeah.
uncle, who was doing, developing film, he went out of business. But look at it from this perspective, all those photographers never had the benefit of graphic design and digital art as an output because 20, 30 years ago, digital art didn't exist. Now, if you look
Right.
everywhere, you look at the shirt you're wearing, you look at anything you walk by, that's all created on a computer now. And that's a true art form that we've seen some really amazing, cool things that didn't exist before now as a
Yeah.
new way to express yourself. And I would venture to say that digital art created more jobs than it destroyed. And I think AI may do the same. And again, it's hard to see the path by because we're in the middle of it right now. But it's the same thing back then when Photoshop came out. People were like, "Oh my gosh, the art of the photography is destroyed. I can just take a picture of this person and put it here. I don't need to frame. I don't need to do lighting. I'm going to
Yeah.
lose that knowledge." That's what we were
Yeah.
all worried about. Now if you don't use Photoshop, you're a little strange, but you can still go for that aesthetic. You're still probably going to
Right.
touch up
Right.
things, but again, I think it created more jobs, and in almost every situation where new technology comes, new disciplines arise and are born, and new ways to create are born. Listen, I would love a world where I have a robot that goes to work for me, and I can stay home and be creative for
Yeah.
my life. You know what I mean?
I agree. I
Um,
agree.
I don't have time to. Uh, you know, learn how to do AutoCAD to design a house. I like an architect. When I have some pretty cool designs I want to get out, should I never have that creative outlet? Well, now I can use generative AI to generate cool houses that just come from my mind. And sure, they may not be architecturally sound, but it's a creative outlet for me, something I can dive into. Who knows? Maybe I fall in love and I get into the discipline. But that's a
Yeah.
whole new way of looking at things. I can go design a video game right now if I would. I gave up on that dream years ago because I never wanted to learn how to code. Right now,
Right.
coding is the smallest part of it. Now, if I have a creative idea for a video game, I can get a mock-up done probably within a day, which is incredible to say. Now, are there going to be game designers that are out of jobs that used to work the same for? Probably. Are there going to be a lot more people using these tools to create new ways of doing things? I think so.
And I think that was one of my arguments is that, it's I think AI as assisting you to get to where you want to go has been very helpful.
Right.
Again, if I look at I'm a producer at heart. I love sampling, and a lot of times, if when I'm sampling a record, I would say to myself, "Man, I wish there was no vocals at this point in the sample." And lo and behold, stems came around,
Mhm.
where now I can actually remove the vocals from that sample and just have the music, the musicality of it itself, and then use that within my production.
Yeah.
Again, software like Autotune and Melodyne, artists would come in and have to sing, or have to do like maybe 20, 40 takes just to get the right pitch or to get the pitch correct. Now engineers are saying, come in, do it once or twice. They do it once or twice. If they can't get it by the second time, they tell them just, oh, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in the software.
Right.
Right. So it's allowed us, the freedom to be more productive,
Mhm.
um, to have more options. And again, like it's become a tool for us. I think the concern is it going past helping us,
Mhm.
and now it's replacing us.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a very real fear. And like as much as I'm optimistic, it's like optimistic, I can't pretend like that's not a risk that exists. It absolutely
Right.
is. Um, and to me, the biggest problem is things are evolving so fast on the AI side that nobody's taking a moment to say, should we do this before they do it? And the reason that is because it's technically an arms race. I mean, if
Right.
they slow down, then their competitors get ahead, and once they're ahead, it's hard to catch up. So you need to keep pushing the envelope because of how fast the technology developed. There was a time where you would develop a new rocket, and it would take 5 years for another rocket to come out. And that would be like, wow, you invented or iterated on this, to make it 10% better within 5 years. Now, within
Mm.
5 months, these things are getting 10 times better than they were before. And as humans, we're really bad at internalizing the pace of change. But I challenge you all to go back to last year, March, and look at what AI video generation looked like. The types of videos that are coming in. Remember the videos of Will Smith not even eating spaghetti properly, like all kind of that was
Yeah.
like last year. Now
Right. Right.
you'll second guess whether that's real or not. You're like, is that? Oh no, yeah, it's AI. I can tell, but it takes a second, and that's in 1 year. What does 5 years from now look like at that rate of change? And it's not at a steady rate, it's exponential. It's getting 10 times better in a few months. By the end of this year, it's going to be in a space that we couldn't predict now. So that's the scary part is it going to change our world and our society so fast that we have nothing to do but become complacent and let it make our music for us and let it think for us and make the decisions because it's so good at it. It could very much happen. I'm hoping it doesn't. I'm hoping that we stay. But like I said, in the optimistic version of the world, there's less strife and less hunger and less war because there's enough. And we figure these things out. How do we figure out these societal challenges we've been dealing with for years? Hopefully, not by wiping out the human race and starting over, but if it can assist us to find this kind of golden age we've been looking for, um, it's at this point where it's in arm's grasp. I remember reading an article maybe last week talking about like, hey, as a person, if you can make it to about 2035, the year 2035, you can
Right.
probably live another 100 years. Alpha, no matter how old you
Mm.
are, you can be 80 years old. If you make it to 2035, the technology is going to be so advanced that it's going to be able to extend your life for 100 years. So in 20 years from that, it could probably extend at 200 years. And then, who knows from there? So we're at
Right.
this kind of breaking point where things. One day you're going to wake up and there's going to be a headline in the newspaper that says we've reached the singularity, and you're probably not going to know what it means. But I can tell you, from that day on, your life will not be the same. So,
Right.
and I think that moment is probably going to be here this year.
Hmm. Really?
I I would. I don't think it's a crazy bet.
Okay. Okay. All right. So going back to the music side of things, and so the second part with the whole Timbaland fiasco is Sono or Suno. Am I pronouncing it right? Sono, Suno?
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with it, but yes, I think it's Suno from what I know. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the ideas is that it's giving you ideas based upon what you request as far as like maybe a music genre or a style of production,
Mhm.
and then it kind of feeds you the information or feeds you back what you requested from there.
Yep.
Now, you do have to tell it. That's one thing I think people are not understanding as of yet, that AI is still only good as the people who are prompting it. With the Timberland situation, shout out to K Fresh Beats. There was a clip of Timberland using Suno, and he calls his version of the AI baby Tim,
Mhm.
and he plays this production. Now, the production itself is eerily similar, eerily similar to the K Fresh production, to
Mhm.
the point where you would have to assume that he used it to kind of train the AI. Now, one of the things that was noticeable was the producer tag.
Mhm.
And this is going back to the earlier conversation that we're having, is how AI is trained and what definitions are given to AI. For instance, if I play a guitar, I got to tell AI, or at least feed AI, maybe hundreds of thousands of different guitars, and then reference that and say, anytime you hear a guitar or these frequencies that are of a guitar, this is what a guitar is.
Mhm.
So now you on your own as AI, using frequencies, can reproduce that guitar sound.
Right.
Right. So you kind of think that they would define the instruments itself.
Mhm.
What they probably have not defined is what a beat tag is.
Right. Right.
So if AI comes across it's learning from something that's being uploaded,
Mhm.
and it can identify and define all those instruments within that production, and then it comes across this beat tag,
Yeah.
it doesn't have the information or the whereabouts to tell it that this is a beat tag. This is actually not a part of what a production is. This is
Yeah.
something personalized as an individual.
Mhm.
Um, and shout out to Jesse from syncmymusic.com. This is it, and this is not the first time it's happened. Almost a year to date,
Mhm.
someone had posted on Reddit how they were using Suno and making a beat, and it gave it a tag, and they were like, "Ah, this tag sounds familiar," only to realize that it was already familiar tag that was being used. And Jesse, he actually compiled a whole bunch of different Suno generated beats,
Mhm.
which had well-known producer tags already in there.
Right.
So here comes the dilemma now, where
Mhm.
we know that it's being trained. We now know it's being trained on,
Right.
obviously it's being trained on software, or sorry, being trained on music that's already out there,
Right.
with or without the producer or the singers or the artist's permission.
Hmm.
Being that the fact, how do we now, how do we not escape the, or what should be in place to actually protect the original music? Like, for instance, sampling, we can't just sample unless we sample very well and chop it to the point where it's indistinguishable.
Right. Right.
If it's noticeable, we run the chance of getting sued,
True.
because there's laws to protect the original artist or the
Right.
original makers of this music, to say that you're not just going to use it without their permission.
Yeah. Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any law in place at this point in
Hmm.
regards to AI. So, what do you think is going to have to happen in order for that part to go forward?
Yeah. There's got to be some kind of regulation. I'm all for the protection of creators' rights. Right. I'm a creator too. Um, I think that it's the wild, wild west right now. It's Napster days. It's like, oh, I can burn a CD and get an album off the internet. I don't got to pay for it, and I'm losing royalty times. And that it's a scary thing, because it really did lower the perceived value of music, right? Even now in the
Right,
streaming area, where streamers a stream is worth fractions of a penny, we're still suffering from this kind of backlash of Napster and file sharing. So I completely understand from an AI perspective. Um, yeah, and to speak specifically about Sono, um, to me, in many respects, it seems like the model they're using is not very good. So, to use an
right,
analogy to back up that you may use as well, and we've used before, this the idea of a sample, right? So you could chop up a sample so good that in many ways it could be considered a completely new composition. So
right.
much so that you'd lose in a course case in court, with trying to prove that it was taken from something else.
Right,
Now,
right.
my analogy then would be, if an AI could chop up something well enough that it was unrecognizable. Of course, taking somebody's beat tag is doesn't fall in that category. Um,
Right,
at what point does it become a new composition? Um, so there's that side of it, but there's also the side where artists need to get paid if their music's going to be put into a tool that's sold commercially, period.
agree, agree.
Um, so I think that's the important piece that we're struggling with right now. Now, again, with the technology changing so fast, it's almost impossible to regulate it, because once you have one piece in there, uh, they can change how something is trained. Now, I don't know if Suno's paying the millions and billions of dollars it takes to upgrade their model. They could be using something super old that's a bad sampler, a better way to say. It's not flipping beats. The algorithm's not good. It's just literally taking and reproducing and giving you stuff not in a good way. I
Right.
listened to some of the Timbaland conversation with Guru and the rest of them, and one of the things I noticed he was saying is that he uploads his beats to get new ideas and listening
Right,
to them in a new way. And that made me
right.
think that model isn't really doing much to the beat. It isn't changing much. It's not recognizing a lot and giving you something completely new and creative. And part of it is, how creative is your large language model? How creative is your algorithm? There's a creativity in that
Mhm.
too, as well, right? Just like the
Okay.
sampler
Yeah.
changing things up. So I don't know. I don't know much about Suno. Um, I've been getting into the controversy now. I'm interested to try it out, because I think I can recognize a lot of algorithmic things within an output. So it'd be
Yeah.
much easier for me to tell, oh, this is what it's actually doing. But my assumption is it's not doing much to change. And that's why we're hearing things like beat tags that exist from its training. It's done
Right.
before. It's just
Right.
pulling it out of the bucket. It's not trying to do something new with it. And therefore it's recognizable. And the question we do again have to ask ourselves is, at what point does it become an entirely new composition? And then at what point, if we get something output and I take it and then do something with it, does somebody need to be compensated for that? And I think that's the question that's always existed. So it's a hard one. It's an incredibly hard one. I do think currently, especially, and there's a bunch of lawsuits happening now, with different large language model providers being sued for how they're training their data. Even the text world, New York Times, I believe, has a lawsuit out against a couple of places, different artists who, I mean, it's you're an artist and you develop a specific type of illustration, right? Everybody's known for you that type of illustration. I can just go into a
Yeah.
model and say, give me a drawing like this person. We saw it with Studio Ghibli and their style of art, and they want to sue. And it's like, hey, kind of, yeah. But then you get to the point where the models are getting so sophisticated now that they're training themselves. They're not even using existing
I,
text. They'll say,
and I'm glad
hey,
you.
model, generate 10 million versions of the New York Times and then train yourself off that. And it's like, okay, now it's getting muddy because I don't know where the line exists
Right,
anymore.
right.
Uh, so it could very much be a problem, but it might not even be a problem for very much longer. The content being generated, think about all people using Chat GPT, right? That's new content being generated. Now, if you reverse train your model on that stuff, um, it gets to a weird meta place where now we don't know what the true inspiration of it is. But bottom line, I think something like, especially that's recognizable, like what Suno's outputting, is something that an artist should be compensated for sure.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that part because yeah, during the Guru and Tim conversation, to me it felt like Guru was the only one in the room where who actually seen where this is actually or where it could really head to. A lot of them were saying, "Oh well, you still need somebody to prompt. You still need somebody to do this. You still need somebody to do that." And I'm saying to myself, "Yeah, now you do." But a little while from now,
Mhm.
it you may not. So, what are the common misconceptions that you think that's happening with AI right now that everybody feels like it's still a safe arena, and it may be a safe arena for the next 3 to 4 years. I mean, you just said, but possibly by the end of this year, we might reach.
Yeah. Again, like, that's the scary thing, right? That's the one nagging thing in the back of your head you can't get away, no matter how optimistic I am, no matter how time I look at it. I work with this literally that I get paid to play with these things on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. And it
Right.
scares me as I watch
Yeah.
where this function. Last week I was like, damn, I wish this thing could do this. Oh, that's impossible. It'll never be able to go out on the internet and search through 10 different sources and summarize it for me and create me a PDF and create Instagram for it and then post. I can't do that. That's crazy. And next week it's able to do it. And
Mm,
when it does it, I'm like, oh, this sucks. It's not exactly how I want it. And next week it's better. And you're just like, wait a second. And it's impossible to keep up. Again, I do it for a living and I can't keep up at
yeah.
how
Yeah.
fast things are changing. So I understand 100% Guru's perspective. I'd love to have a conversation with him, honestly, from a tech perspective. But the question is way larger than music, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
AI has the ability to get to a point where it's super intelligent, right? We have this AI right now. We're in what we call a artificial narrow intelligence (ANI),
Okay.
where it's kind of looks like it's doing human stuff. It can trick some people who don't know what's happening. It's really good at like spell checking, completion, and things of that nature. Then we have AGI, artificial general intelligence, where it's basically as smart as us. We can't tell the
Mm,
difference. Some
okay.
people will say we're pretty much there. I think the benchmark right now is pretty close. Like maybe it's like 170 IQ or something like that. It's up there. And the next level is artificial superintelligence, which is it's smarter than any human's ever been. And
Okay.
the day after that, literally the day after it reaches that point, it gets way smarter than we can consider and measure.
We become the batteries at that point.
We become the batteries, as they say. Now, what happens at that point, nobody knows. That's why they call it the singularity. In science, a
Right.
singularity is like a black hole. We don't know what's on the other side of it. We know all our rules and laws and things we expect to happen break down. So we just call it a singularity. That's what's going
Okay.
to happen with AI. There's going to be a moment where all our predictions, all the way we understand and program this thing, is going to not be something we can control. And sure, we might isolate it, but it's going to be so much smarter than us that nobody knows what's going to happen. So, from a larger perspective, forget about the fact that it might get to the point where it's so good at music that it puts all the musicians out of work in the world. I think that's some of the lowest hanging fruit, the lowest things we have to worry about. At
Right,
that
right.
point, it's so good at everything else that who knows what it might be doing.
I heard I can't remember his name. He used to work for Google, but they were one guy was asking what would you tell your kids in the future to do? And he said become plumbers.
Yeah. I think this, as a lot of people ask me about that, like, what should I tell my kids to study?
Right,
And yeah, like things that need for humans to be sustained, I think is important. Things that are going to need a human touch. Like, I don't think no matter how good the robots and smart the robots get, anybody's going to want like a robot nurse taking care of them when they're sick. They're going to want a human there.
right.
Um, there's just a bunch of places where I think we're still going to need humans for many many years. But listen, I work with tools that have perfect logic and vocal conversation that's pure AI. Like the call center worker might not
Right.
need to exist within a year or two once
Mm,
once the technology is easy integrated into existing systems.
yeah.
It's a different thing. That's what's holding it back right now, and the fact that it's growing so rapidly. But hey, head over to hexcode.ai. Get the AI to give you a call. You can put your phone number in there to give you a call. It's a sales tool. Talk to it. Talk to ChatGPT. There's a conversational mode. Tell it to pretend it's a call center person and have role playing with it. It can do that now. People are still thinking about typing into ChatGPT. I haven't typed into ChatGPT in months. I talk to it like an assistant. It talks back to me. I can have it
Yeah.
book things in my calendar. It's like a person that rolls around with me. And so many of us are still stuck in last year's thinking of, hey, this thing can make recipes for us. No, it's way past that at this point.
Mm, mm. Now you mentioned so we went from AI to ANI, and I guess the next logical step would be AGI.
Yeah.
With that in mind, we're because we're saying right now, like you certain music you can tell it was done by AI,
Mhm.
right? It feels soulless. It doesn't feel there's no human touch, no human emotion to it.
Right.
When we reach AGI,
Mhm.
do you think that the intelligence will be able to mimic some sort of type of soul, some type of feeling, some type of human emotion? Because I think that's what really is setting us, I think that's what's really still setting us apart right now, right? Is
Right.
that we have emotion, we still have the feel that is not something that can be readily taught.
Right. I can only answer that question by trying to give you an emotion I felt recently. So,
Okay.
like I said, I went to school for audio engineering. Um, Analog and digital. We're all familiar with the terms. I don't think many engineers even know like what it really means. What does analog and digital really mean, right? The
Right.
way I like to think about it is, and let's go right back to audio basics. You've got your sine wave, you got your zero line, you've got your crest and your wave and your trough and your sine wave to make sound, right? And there's different
Right.
versions of it. With digital music, that sine wave is chopped up into little pieces. And then those pieces are assigned a numerical value. And that number, that value that's assigned could be a string of digits. If it's 16-bit, it's 16, right? 16
Right.
digits to represent one small section of that sine wave. Now, that sine wave happens 1,000 times a second. 1,001 kilohertz is 1,000 times a second that sine
Right.
wave is open up. Your speaker going in and out, essentially, right? We can assign, if we can chop that into those fine pieces and then assign a number it to have a very specific thing, and we can change that number. It can be an 8-bit, it can be a 16-bit, and you know the difference between an 8-bit digital signal and a 16-bit digital signal, and a 24-bit. You hear the difference, and all that is a more fine chop. We know 44.1 and 96. 96 is 96,000 chops of one sine wave. That's
Right.
incredibly small. So
Right.
that's how
Right.
a digital signal is processed. And that is a chop up of an analog continuous electrical pulse signal, right? That's the digital representation, a simplified version of that.
Yeah.
I walked into a vinyl club in Miami a few months ago. Straight analog from the needle on the record to the speakers. And the
Yeah.
feeling I got in that club, the music, is something I forgot about what it felt like being in an
Mhm.
environment with pure analog sound, great acoustics, old, I
Yeah.
guess the name of the club. Um, and right there, even as far as digital audio has come, I realized that digital audio still to this day sounds nothing like analog music. It doesn't
Right.
feel like analog music. So
Right.
I think even at the AGI level, when this thing is really good at chopping it up to beyond 96K, I still think there's going to be a feeling missing from it. And we're going to be able
Okay.
to tell. And I
Okay.
think that's the savior and the good part about what this tool can do, because it's not going to be able to replace what a human can do, that soul that it adds to, that emotion, that feeling in the composition of the music. I don't think it's going to be there when AI does that. And I think humans are going to be able to use AI as a tool to further that kind of space between, or add a new version, a new kind of soul, a new aspect of music, new dimension to it that didn't exist before.
Got it. Got it. Um, Going back to the point where analog started entering into the digital realm. Um, the music instrumentation had started becoming digital, made for everything compact, and lo and behold, here comes the bedroom producer. And
Mhm.
again, we're seeing at that point, you still had to have an idea of what you were doing. You still kind of had to be musically inclined to produce good music. And not because it was affordable and you ran out and bought the stuff, meant that you were now going to be like some super producer.
Right.
But it definitely leveled the playing field, and a lot of producers that we see today probably wouldn't see them if it wasn't for that leap from analog to digital.
Mhm.
Now we're seeing now we're seeing AI being introduced. At this point, it's still gonna take somebody who has some sort of idea, and again, also not just within the music discipline, but I would also say, with digital media in general, somebody with a specific know-how and a specific knowledge of composition is probably going to give you the best results with these tools to this point.
And just talent too. Like those who are talented
Talent,
and creative, they're going to use
talent.
the tools better than the AI by itself is going to be able to make music, in my opinion. Yeah.
So my question becomes, right? Because and I've had this chat probably with I've had this conversation in maybe another chat probably about maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago, where they were saying the one of the big fields that this is going to create is prompt engineering.
Mhm.
Can you tell the people what prompt engineering is, or
Yeah.
what a prompt engineer is?
Yeah, I'll tell you about the birth and death of prompt engineering. So, prompt engineering is a discipline that was thought to be important for controlling an AI's output. So, the thinking was that if you can talk to an AI in a specific manner, it would give you better outputs, especially generative AI. And the idea was that if you got really good at prompt engineering, you'd be very useful to businesses because you'd be able to use the AI better than anybody else, essentially.
Okay.
So the idea was like, hey, that's a job you should go for. But that, again, with the speed of this technology, that lasted about 3 months because the large language models came out with something called grounded prompts, which essentially meant that when you'd entered your text into the input field, before it served it to the large language model, it would change it so that it was a bit more palatable for it to understand and give you the output you want. So now
Yeah.
prompt engineering, even though that's something, a discipline that just got created, is pretty much dead now because you don't
It's,
need prompt engineers.
it's been wiped.
Yeah, straight. So think about it. AI created a job and killed it before it even got to the head, which is crazy. That's the first time I've ever seen anything like that.
I mean, it's okay. So I don't know, because my next question was going to be: can someone who is really good at prompt engineering with no knowledge of music production become a good music producer? And what you're basically saying is, well,
Okay.
they don't really have to be really good at prompt engineering.
Well, here's the thing. Good is subjective. So, do I
Yeah.
think without any work, without no knowledge of music, and without putting in your 10,000 hours, whatever, do I think they'll be a good producer? No. Do I think
Okay.
they could be a successful producer? Yes, they could
Okay.
be. Now, I would liken that to, viral streamers who may not have a specific talent, but can become successful just from output of content and
Right. Right.
derivative content, even content that's not even original, right? They just chop and post and put, you can become successful and you can make money off of it, but are you good? No.
Makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense.
Mm.
All right. I'm about to wrap up the conversation, but the one question, my final question would be is um the why. Why do we need AI to make music or to do anything at this point? Like why can't we do it ourselves? What would be your answer to that?
Oh, wow, we're getting deep, philosophical at the end. Okay, so I'll get equally deep then to match. There is an intrinsic part to the human spirit to create something beyond itself. And if you're religious and biblical, specifically, you identify with the phrase, created in the image of God, right?
Right.
And
Right.
God, in its base, whatever you believe in, base form, is a creator. And if we are made in the image of God, we want to be creator as well. I often say, science uh, and technology is the language of God, just translated for humans, where what God
Mhm.
does with a snap of his or her finger, their fingers, or thought, we take a 1,000 years to figure out how to split an atom, right?
Right.
So for me, I think that human nature to expand beyond our borders and our boundaries is just something intrinsic to us. It's what made us dominate this planet. It's what is built this civilization that we are here right now. You who are hundreds of kilometers away from me, who can have a live conversation, chat, a meeting of minds, a sharing of
Yeah.
information, which 100 years ago would be a magical thing to happen, comes from that hunger to create beyond ourselves.
Right.
So I
Right.
think artificial intelligence is a natural extension of that. What we're actually afraid of when it comes to artificial intelligence is that it's going to be a true representation of ourselves that we create, a new race, a new life form born out of some of our fears, some of our apprehensions, some of our hate and violence, and that's going to be its primary motivation. That's what we're really worried about. And that translates to all disciplines, whether it's what we think it's going to do to music, what we think it's going to do to art, what we think it's going to do to civilization. And that's a fair thought. And I think says way more about us than it says about artificial intelligence. So if there's anything we need to worry about, it's what our mirror image held up to us is really going to look like.
All right. Dope. All right, well, before we sign off, tell the people where they can find you, where they can find more information. Also, we have again on my other podcast, The Prodigal Sons, we've sat with Blue twice to talk about AI.
Third time
We
coming
do
soon.
third time coming soon. We're always trying to
Yeah,
keep up
this
to
is
date, and
2.5 right now.
it just moves so fast that
Yeah.
we always got to bring him in ahead of schedule. So yeah, so we'll probably have to do a next one real soon. But
Yep.
apart from that, because I'll throw all the links in the credits for where they can find those episodes. But besides that, just let the people know where they can find out more of what you're doing, and possibly get in contact with you if they ever need information for their company or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely do AI consulting. If you're interested in learning about AI, thinking about how to bring it into your business, you can contact me at Sean Watson 301, SeanWatson 301 on Instagram, or Blue, BLUU, at clockwork.ninja, CLOCKWORK.ninja. Blue at clockwork.ninja, the email for business inquiries. And if I really like you, you can follow my true Instagram. That's MAAJINNBL with 2 U's, Magin Blue on Instagram as well. And I might accept you, I might not. I don't know.
It,
A lot of AI
it
bots out
depends.
there right now.
Depends on what the algorithm is telling them. Well, Blue, thank you. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. You are our resident AI specialist. So anytime I have any questions, or anytime I see anything that pops up in my feed in regards to AI, you're like the first person I send text. Is this true? Like, can this happen? Like, can it do this? So,
Yeah,
thank you for answering all my personal
of
questions.
course.
And making my mind at ease. And thank you again for joining this panel, because I really wanted to just show that side of AI itself, and hopefully give producers, musicians, and those who are within the music field a better understanding
Mm,
of the tools itself, from those that are going to help you, to those that may one day might replace you. Like, we don't know. We're hoping for the best. We're optimistic, because like we said, there's tons of things that have happened in the past that replaced, but also at the point of replacement created new,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
So this may be a point where it just creates new opportunities for those of us coming up and embracing the technology, as far before fearing the technology. Let's put it that way. So
Absolutely.
again, once again, I thank you. Thank our sponsors, Plug In Music, and yeah, we'll see you on the flip side.
Bless.
Bless.